All right, we start with breaking news. 2 in the morning in Israel, 7 p.m. Eastern here in Washington. And the IDF says they are at maximum readiness for a possible attack by Iran. A true Middle East war, if it erupted, could upend the presidential race yet again. Both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are off the campaign trail today. And with that, we welcome you to the fairest show on television, first tonight from Washington. It's been 3 weeks, and things keep getting worse for Republicans, not just for Donald Trump, but for Republicans at all. For reasons beyond understanding, the American people do not associate the policies of the Biden-Harris administration with Kamala Harris. New polling shows more Americans trust Kamala Harris on the economy than Donald Trump. This is a wild turnaround in numbers from Trump-Biden numbers on the economy. And Harris is now running an ad about, wait for it, border security.
As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
So Republicans can, and they are, complaining all they want about the media double standard. They're complaining about the coronation, the honeymoon, the sugar high. But much like arguing with referees in sports, you just kind of look like a loser. Associated Press puts it this way: Harris is pushing joy, Trump paints a darker picture. Will mismatched moods matter? Well, Americans for years told us they wanted somebody other than Trump or Biden. And now they have that person. It is somebody else. So this shouldn't surprise anyone. Just look at the cover of Time magazine. Harris has pulled off the swiftest vibe shift in modern political history. Time did this glowing, and I mean glowing, profile without Harris sitting down for an interview. It's been 22 days, and she shows no sign of meeting with the press, talking to the press, that she says is so important for defending democracy. It's been over 3 weeks, and Harris's only policy proposal is no taxes on tips, which was legitimately taken directly from the Trump campaign. And all Donald Trump has done the past 3 weeks is complain.
I hear he's going to make a comeback at the Democrat convention. He's going to walk into the room and he's going to say, I want my presidency back. I want another chance to debate Trump. I want another chance.
President Trump also doubled down on a conspiracy theory about Kamala Harris faking her crowd size. Has anyone noticed that Kamala cheated at the airport? There was nobody at the plane, and she AI'd it and showed a massive crowd of so-called followers, but they didn't exist. Whether Donald Trump believes it or not, Kamala Harris's crowds do exist. So much so that his most devoted followers are now terrified.
And you've got to make this race not on personalities. Stop questioning the size of her crowds and start questioning her position when it comes to what did she do as Attorney General on crime. Question what did she do when she was supposed to take care of the border as a czar. Question that they brought inflation.
When Trump attacks Harris personally rather than on policy, Harris's support among swing voters rises.
Trump's frustrated. He's arguing crowd size, claiming her numbers are inflated by AI. He's miffed that Harris has taken over his no tax on tips idea. Now it seems he's got to fight to win, and he hasn't quite figured out how to do it.
So Kamala Harris now has a free ride on two fronts. The media continues to salivate over Kamala Harris's reincarnation, and Donald Trump keeps taking the bait rather than talking about the issues voters care about. Bill O'Reilly is here, host of the No Spin News, author of the coming book, Confronting the President's No Spin Assessments from Washington to Biden. Bill, is Kamala Harris figured out how to bring out the very worst in Donald Trump?
No. Why would she bother figuring that out? Trump will bring out the very worst without any help.
Oh, okay.
You don't need any help
how about this? Has Kamala Harris brought it out? Has Kamala Harris's meteoric rise brought out the worst in Donald Trump?
I don't think so. I don't think Trump's afraid of Kamala Harris. I think that the former president lacks discipline still in messaging. You know, when you are running for an office and you know the deck is stacked against you, where the media, as you just pointed out, is not going to report anything honestly at all. Nothing. And the Democratic Party has got a constituency that hates you, and that will drive a vote out. Doesn't matter what the issues are. Then you have to basically figure out, if I want to win, I have to do this. So to me, this would be the economy above all. You're spending so much money on the essentials of life, and it's because of Biden-Harris. And they can't refute that. The numbers are the numbers. And then the border. I mean, I think Kamala Harris is looking foolish by saying, I'm a tough border queen now. All Trump's got to do is rerun the Lester Holt interview on NBC. And Holt said, hey, how come you haven't been to the border? She says, I have been to the border. Holt goes, no, you haven't. And then she goes, I haven't been to Europe either. Just run that clip 100 times. So
why isn't he doing
discipline. It's all about, I don't know. I don't know who he hires or why they're not doing it. One thing I know about Donald Trump is that he's a very emotional guy. People don't think he's emotional, but he is. And if he's having a bad day, that bad day is going to come out during a rally or an interview like Musk tonight. Having a good day, then his presentation will be more crisp. But he isn't like a guy who is internalizing what I should do. He just flies. And he doesn't really think about the repercussions of what he says. And that's hurting him.
You agree with me that Elon Musk interview tonight presents some real dangers for him?
No. I don't agree with you on anything. No, that's not true. I once in a while, I'll agree with Leland. Look, the Elon Musk interview tonight is a love fest because Musk is pumping, tens of millions of dollars into the Trump campaign. And Trump is not going to be able to, Trump is not going to be hammered by Musk anyway. He just isn't. But what's interesting about the story is that the EU is now threatening Musk if he runs the interview. And you knew this. This just broke a couple of hours ago. So a guy named Thierry, Thierry Breton, Thierry Breton. Nobody named that in Levittown where I grew up. Anyway, Thierry is the commissioner for internal marketing of the EU, and he says that any disinformation that comes from Donald Trump might get Musk in a lot of trouble with the EU. That's essentially what the letter said. It's a threatening letter. And the reason they're doing this is because Europe is very, very frightened of the backlash against undocumented migrants, especially in Great Britain, which isn't a member of the EU, and those stabbings of those little girls, that place is about to blow over there. And the EU is rightfully concerned. But you don't try to censor an American interview theory.
Look,
what's the matter with you, you blockhead? I mean, come on.
Well, look, I don't know if you saw the Washington Post reporter ask Karine Jean-Pierre today at the White House about doing just this. So there is that. We'll get back to America, where you have a column out today on BillO'Reilly.com. Perhaps the biggest tell about Kamala is that she believes all Americans should be in an equal place. Of course, that's precisely what Stalin, Mao, Castro, and Xi spout. Comparing Kamala Harris to the most evil in the world, isn't that a little bit like when the left compares Donald Trump to Hitler?
See, now this is what you call a loaded question from Leland, those of you watching right now. I didn't compare Harris to those heinous individuals. I compared what she said to what they said. I didn't compare her to them. Now, surely you know that Kamala Harris said that.
I'm sorry, Bill. I put your quote up on. I put your quote up there.
Yeah, I said.
How is that loaded? How is your own word loaded?
Because she said what they said doesn't mean she's like them. It means she has a mindset where she believes that the government of the United States can engineer personal outcomes, which is insane. It's never worked. That's what Bernie Sanders wants. That's what Elizabeth Sanders wants. That's what Kamala Harris says she wants. And so if you vote for her, they'll spend trillions of dollars on nonsense trying to make everybody's life the same, when human beings are born with different capabilities. You can't social engineer it. No government in the world has succeeded in doing that. All they succeed in doing is impoverishing the entire population, like Cuba, like Vietnam, like North Korea, on and on and on and on. But the question was loaded, Leland, because you're trying to bait me into saying that Kamala Harris is Mao Zedong. And I'm not even close to that. You see what I'm talking about here?
All right. I want your perspective on this, because I don't think it was loaded, but that's fine. And I didn't say you compared them, but go ahead. Okay, so here's the next question. We'll put the quote back up, and I think this is an important one, especially sort of as we look through the presidents. I remember very specifically, there was a moment back when we both worked at Fox, you sent Jesse Waters, I think after the Oscars, to confront a couple of actors about Barack Obama. And one of the actors corrected Jesse Waters and said, it's not Obama, it's President Obama. And you had Waters on and you told him it's President Obama.
That was
when do we have...
That was George Clooney.
Yep.
Obama's best friend out in the West Coast. That was George Clooney. Very indignant. It's
Yep,
President
he was.
Obama. Now, would George say the same thing about Donald Trump, do you think? Do you think
Oh, no, of course not. But that's not, of course not. But no, of course not. But we hold you and I hold ourselves to different standards than people who have double standards, which you're pointing out. But in your column, you refer to her as Kamala. At what point is it required that we refer to her, at the very least, as Harris, as we would Trump? You know, I read your column about Donald Trump. It didn't refer to him as Donald all the time.
I referred to Kamala because I didn't want to be repetitive. I also referred to her as the vice president. I believe I said Ms. Harris. I used a whole bunch of descriptions. And as a columnist, I got to move my column along. I don't want to be saying the same thing over and over. That's all. It wasn't a slight to the vice president at all. I'm not in the business of slighting Kamala Harris. I don't do that, okay? I want to point out to everyone in this country, if you vote for this woman, you are voting for drastic change for the worse. Your life is going to get worse. You got a taste of it with Biden in the grocery store, at the gas pump, filling out your check to buy insurance. You got a taste. You're going to get the full meal with Harris. Okay? Well, that's my job. Not to run her down in any way.
And to be fair, Karine Jean-Pierre today was talking about how Biden picked Harris to continue his legacy and to build on, in their words, his successes.
No. See, if I'm in the White House press room, if I'm there, which would never happen in a million years, I go, that's not true, Ms. Jean-Pierre. President Biden said to the American people, I'm putting an African-American woman on the ticket. That's what he said. It had nothing to do with his legacy. It had nothing to do with anything else other than promising a skin color choice and a gender choice.
Well, that was in 2020. This is now 2024.
Votes.
This was most recently in 2024. He said, I chose her to build on my successes when he endorsed her this time around. Either way, new polling sponsored by Won't Pack Down. Harris leads Trump among voters under 30, 51-42. 6 weeks ago, Trump led 48-44. If your hypothesis is right, this is what's your financial status under Biden, 50% worse off. At what point does the youngest Americans, who I think you rightly point out, and your column certainly does, would be most affected by Kamala Harris's policy proposals. How is it that they have that Republicans did not figure out that if Biden gets replaced on the ticket, which he did, Donald Trump is perhaps the worst person in the world to run against him?
Well, the Republican Party is generated by a system of primaries which elected Donald Trump to be the standard bearer. So the Republican Party has no say over that. But you ask a good question about the younger folks. So I know this world because my son is about to turn 21. And so I'm surrounded by urchins, some of whom know things, most of whom don't know anything, Leland. They know nothing, okay? And I'm gentle when they ask me something that they should know, and I explain very slowly, not using any large words, all right, what they want to know. But we're not talking about an electorate in that area that is sophisticated in its evaluations of policy. I don't want to be supercilious on the word of the day, but that's the truth. And also, this wave of emotion into the Harris camp was predictable. It's a younger woman. She's now repudiating all her far-left policies and statements. Don't believe that for a second. She'll go right back to that. But it's an emotional polling now. I think you said this after the debate, when things get closer, 6 weeks or so, that emotion will ebb. And if Kamala Harris can't bring it in the debate, if she can't bring it, she's done. And finally,
high stakes.
I am Mr. Egotistical, as you know. You've known me for a while. I am Mr. Egotistical. You're looking at right here. If Kamala Harris sat down with me for a 40-minute interview, all right, her political career would end. Because I know everything about her, everything she espouses, all of the history behind what she's spouting, how it hasn't worked anywhere. And I could ask her questions she couldn't possibly answer. Couldn't possibly answer them. And that's the truth.
Okay. You heard it here first. Bill, good to see you as always. Thank you. For the lesson in humility as well. The Republican Party is in chaos right now because of Donald Trump's free fall. Can Republicans save the Senate? And the Democratic convention begins 1 week. 1 week from tonight. Live pictures of Chicago. Will Hamas end Kamala Harris's political honeymoon? Fall right now puts Republicans' hopes and dreams of controlling both houses of Congress in crisis. And obviously, if Kamala Harris wins, that would be the only check Republicans have. A few weeks ago, Republicans talked about having 55 Senate seats and the ability to ram through any kind of legislation from Donald Trump. This is the DDHQ projection map. Republicans have places they will almost certainly pick up a seat. West Virginia, for example, on that map. Montana might be likely, but still, there's some issues. Then there is Maryland, which, as you can see, is a really hard road for a Republican. Larry Hogan is that Republican trying to flip a blue Senate seat in Maryland. It's proving to be a tall task. He trails his virtually unknown opponent by 8 points, although there's a lot of undecideds out there, which is significant because Larry Hogan won Maryland by 12 points back in 2018. Republican senatorial candidate, former Governor Larry Hogan, with us on site. Good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Great to see you.
You know that old line, crisis is both opportunity and danger. Republicans are in crisis right now, clearly. What's that mean for you?
Well, it's hard to tell exactly what it means, but first of all, I would just caution you, you know this, following politics as you do, that this is still very early. We've got 85 days into the election, so whatever the polls say now aren't going to matter as much as what we do over the next 85 days. Also, I think it really does provide an opportunity, and you were talking about the free fall and the changing numbers for Republican candidates across the country. I think I'm sort of immune to that a little bit, maybe.
Is that because you refuse to accept Trump's endorsement? Does that that mean if Trump's not doing well, it doesn't hurt you?
Well, I've just got a long track record and brand that's completely separate from the Republican brand and separate from Donald Trump, and that's why we were successful. I ran 46 points ahead of Donald Trump in Maryland, and the voters continue to still trust me.
We're going to play back-to-back your latest ad, trying to position yourself really, truly in the middle, which, to be fair, is where you governed from when you were in office, and then Congressman Glenn Ivey's response to that ad. Take a listen.
Yeah.
Marylanders know me, and they know that I have the courage to stand up to the current president, the former president, to the party bosses in the Democratic Party or in the Republican Party.
Not on the ads that I've seen.
Okay.
The ads I've seen, he's running as a Democrat, basically. So he said yesterday I saw one of his ads is choosing people over politics.
Okay.
Now that is the House Democrats slogan for this cycle. That's
what we hear from Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah, exactly. And then he talked about abortion.
So he's not a real Republican, is what you're saying.
Well, he certainly isn't running on their issues, and he's a million miles away from what Donald Trump's focus could be.
Is that a criticism?
I'm not sure. I mean, look, I left office last January with a 77% job approval, 70% over every demographic, but 79 with Democrats. So he's right in the fact that I'm pretty popular with people across the aisle. But I've got a proven track record over 8 years of getting things done.
So why aren't you doing better? I hate to ask it that way.
Yeah, well, because of the drain at the top of the ticket, and because people are concerned about me being the 51st vote to empower the MAGA agenda. And so we do have to clearly separate ourselves and say, look, I'm going to be a critical swing vote that's willing to stand up in the middle and fight for what I think is best for the state of Maryland and for the people of America. And that's exactly what I've done for the past 8 years. And so people know that I'm willing to stand up, that I have the courage to do that. I'm not going to be a rubber stamp for anybody. And my opponent is. She's going to be 100% whatever the Democrat bosses tell her to do.
So just to be specific in this, what would that you've seen that Republicans want to do, and to be fair, Donald Trump's put out a lot more policy proposals than Kamala Harris has, but what has Donald Trump put out that you'd say absolutely not?
Well, quite frankly, I wrote an op-ed in criticizing Project 2025, which had a lot of things.
Well, he's disavowed that. So
I'm glad he did.
Okay.
But that, I came out, first of all, it was talking about politicizing the entire federal workforce, which we have the largest concentration of federal workers of any state in America. I thought that was crazy. I think, some of the stuff that was in that policy, obviously I disagreed with. I agree with Trump on a lot of economic policy. I think some of the Trump tax cuts, like small business tax credits and things like that, we've got to support. I think on foreign policy, we're pretty much in alignment, but I'm sure there are lots of things I'm going to disagree with either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump on, and I've never hesitated to stand up when I do disagree, and that's what I'll continue to do.
No, I watched that. I covered you when you were governor. But just to put a finer point on this, you said you're going to be the critical swing vote, and people are worried about rubber stamping the MAGA agenda. Is there any specific things from Donald Trump that you've seen that he's disavowed, but things he actually said he wants to do that you'd say, I'm sorry, I'm voting with the Democrats?
Well, I think, obviously, if they try to put this Project 2025 stuff in, I'll be very much in disagreement. You just heard the congressman say something about abortion. I mean, I've been pretty clear that I'm going to support women's right access to abortion, which, I'm not sure where Trump comes down. He changes his position quite often. But that's one I have already staked out a position in opposition to that. And so, look, on January 6th, we had quite a disagreement, as I sent in the National Guard to protect the Capitol. I don't know that we're going to be talking about the MAGA agenda. Right now, as you just showed, Trump's in free fall. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of instances.
You watch Kamala Harris's rollout in the coronation of the past 3 weeks, especially on the issue now of the border that she is objectively flip-flopped on, from saying it shouldn't be criminalized to now being tougher. Is this something that you're going to be able to run on?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge issue. There's not only a big difference, she's completely failed on the border. It's one of the biggest. I mean, the economy's terrible, but they've really failed on the border. I think we need to immediately secure the border, and then I think we've got to fix the broken immigration system. My opponent, who's very closely aligned with Kamala Harris, or maybe to the left of Kamala Harris, she is refusing. She's the largest jurisdiction that's refusing to cooperate with ICE. When they ask for a detainer on a violent criminal, she's releasing them onto the streets without telling ICE about it. She's for illegals having the right to vote, which I'm not even sure Kamala Harris supports. It's pretty far left policy. And so I think it's a huge issue. Number one issue in our state, like the rest of the country, is the economy and affordability, inflation. 2 is crime, and 3 is the border.
All right. Governor, good to see you. Appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much. Kamala Harris went from calling out pro-Palestinian protesters to hugging them in the course of 48 hours. Why Hamas will kill her political honeymoon. Kamala Harris will do anything to prevent protests like these at the DNC next week. Live look in Israel, where there's about to be an all-out war, at least there certainly could be. The U.S. just sent a guided missile submarine to the area as Iran promises a large-scale attack any day. But Kamala Harris seems most concerned, not about the war, but about appeasing the pro-Palestinian protesters, and with good reason politically. Pictures like these at the DNC would certainly end the honeymoon. Hamas has a tendency to do that. It's a sharp reversal, this embrace of the protesters, from a previous take. Here's what she said about the protests on Wednesday, and then a very different take just 2 days later.
He intends to surrender our fight against the climate crisis, and he intends to end the Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking. Let me just say this on topic of what I think I'm hearing over there. Let me just speak to that for a moment, and then I'm going to get back to the business at hand. So let me say, I have been clear. Now is the time to get a ceasefire deal and get the hostage deal done.
It's almost like she had a cue card just sort of sitting there ready for that moment that she looked down at, because it clearly was not on the teleprompters as she read. The Democratic National Convention is a week away, where Democrats are desperately trying to avoid scenes like the riots of 1968 in Chicago. Actor, filmmaker, activist, and lifelong Democrat Yuval David is here. But first, NewsNation's Alex Capriello reports from Chicago with what protesters want and why Kamala Harris can't meet them. Alex?
Y'all coming to the March on DNC?
Absolutely.
In 1 week, an estimated 30,000 protesters hope to disrupt the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. They're vowing a massive turnout. It's a coalition representing more than 200 organizations, rallying for reproductive rights, to combating police brutality, to promoting environmental change. But above all, it's been the war on Gaza that has motivated activists from all over the world in at least 21 different states.
We have a constitutionally protected right to bring our demand to end the genocide of the Palestinian people to the doorstep of the Democratic Party.
The March on the DNC is demanding the U.S. cut off funding to Israel. And the lead up to this massive event has been nonstop.
We're getting prepared to march on the DNC on August 19th.
NewsNation got behind-the-scenes access to the recruiting, planning, and mobilization of the protesters.
This has been a year-long struggle to build for this march, and at this point now we're 200 organizations strong, and we're ready to march in the tens of thousands.
The Anti-Defamation League has instructed pro-Israel supporters to not engage. But we've already seen counter-protests rise up across the country. This anti-war movement echoing the massive protests that overran the 1968 Chicago Convention. 7 days of clashes with police while the whole world was watching. Jewish leaders are warning officials of possible violence and vandalism in the streets, like we've seen in Washington, D.C. and New York City.
We see it on the posters that they fly across our cities and plaster all over that say, escalate, escalate for Gaza, escalate at the DNC. What else could that mean? It certainly doesn't mean escalating peace.
Are you condemning that type of protesting that's happening?
I condemn our government's full-scale support of genocide, and I condemn the ADL and JUF's support of genocide. That's the actual main issue, respectfully.
And Leland, exactly 1 week from now, I know you and our really great NewsNation political team will be inside the United Center covering that DNC. In the meantime, I'm going to be outside of the United Center covering any protests that might happen. I can already tell you we're seeing some changes even beginning today, new fences that have come up along the perimeter. This is the boundary that the United States Secret Service has established. It is going to be very hard for anybody to penetrate it if they do not have an official DNC credential. Leland.
Yeah, you might say the real story could be outside of the DNC. All right, Alex, thank you very much. Actor, filmmaker, activist, lifelong Democrat, Yuval David is here. Welcome. Thanks. Appreciate you joining us. Is this your Democratic Party anymore?
Wow, what a question. It's the type of question that makes me feel quite politically homeless. It makes me question, do I remain within the Democratic Party? I've studied Jewish history for a very long time, and I've always noticed that Jews historically have changed alliances, and they changed alliances to stay with those or choose to be with those who will protect them the most. I thought that was Jewish history. But I'm finding myself thinking those same exact things right now. When people like Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib are able to spew not just misinformation, but purposeful disinformation, it makes me feel very uncomfortable in the Democratic Party that I've been part of my whole life.
Perhaps what they say isn't as troubling is that leadership in the Democratic Party is going along with it. There's a second point here, though. The United States has given billions upon billions of dollars of weapons to Israel. There's currently thousands, if not tens of thousands, of American sailors, airmen, Marines in harm's way to protect Israel right now from an Iranian attack. Aside from the fact that you've got some people chanting pro-Hamas slogans, and we've been pretty clear about what those words mean, what else could Israel possibly want from this Democratic Party?
Firstly, there are 8 Americans who are still held hostage by Hamas. I'm an American citizen. I was born in Washington, D.C. I would expect our country to do everything we can to rescue our American hostages. Just because these hostages are Jewish, does that mean they don't matter as much? Why are our American people not out on the streets chanting to free the hostages? And in fact, I'm wearing this right now, which is about bring them home. And I brought one for you.
Thank you very much.
Our hostages need to be liberated. When people call for ceasefire, we must recognize that there is no ceasefire while Hamas is still chanting and calling out for the destruction of Israel. There cannot be a ceasefire while our hostages are still held.
By way of saying, when you hear Kamala Harris say there needs to be a ceasefire, and she said, to be fair, bring the hostages home.
Right.
But when you hear her say there needs to be a ceasefire, that says what to you as an American Democratic Jew?
It makes me question my allegiance and my decision to vote for her. Will I vote for somebody who isn't systematically calling out?
Okay, hold on. So she said very clearly, and it's a binary choice, if you want Donald Trump to be in power, keep saying that. Would you vote for Donald Trump?
That's a very good question. You know, I've seen Donald Trump as being an unhinged, unstable person, yet I'm mind-boggled to think, wow, I think I feel safer within the Republican Party. I feel safer to possibly even vote for Donald Trump, which negates so much of everything else.
So much of everything you believe in. All right. Appreciate you being here.
I appreciate
Thank you very much
as well.
All right. We wrote about this first in War Notes. That's our free daily newsletter. Comes out every day at 4 o'clock. Gives you our thoughts on the most important stories of the day. You go to warnotes.com to subscribe for free. Reply. We read them all. Share some of your thoughts every week. At Leland Vittert on Instagram and that thing that used to be called Twitter. Donald Trump thinks his personal grievances are more important than winning. Why Republicans will not believe him. Simple question. Are you better off now than you were when I was president? It's a remarkably normal, even disciplined approach. It's exactly the campaign his advisors and donors want him to run. But we all know it will not last. Meredith McGraw understands that better than most. Deep knowledge of the former president. She's the national political correspondent for Politico and out with a new book called Trump in Exile. I have a copy here. It is a must read, I would say. Congratulations on the book. Could not have come at a better time. Welcome.
Thank you.
What is going on in Mar-a-Lago right now? Is their head still spinning?
Well, just think about the past 4 weeks and what we've seen in terms of this 2024 campaign. Trump survived an assassination attempt. There was the RNC convention in Milwaukee where the Republican Party was incredibly confident. The polling was all...
They were talking about winning Minnesota.
Exactly. The polling was all going in their favor. They were riding high. And when President Biden stepped down and Vice President Kamala Harris stepped up with this new ticket, it has really put the Trump campaign on their back foot. And they're now trying to figure out how they're going to message against Harris. They're working that out in real time. And they're still looking at these key battleground states and this core group of undecided voters who really are going to determine this election. But still, it is now a much closer race than the Trump campaign thought it was going to be.
Well, you say the campaign's trying to figure out how to message. Donald Trump sort of already figured it out, right? New York Times reporting on this. Inside the worst 3 weeks of Donald Trump's 2024 campaign, people around the former and would-be presidency candidate knocked off his bearings, disoriented by his new contest with Kamala Harris, and unsure how to take her on. And there was this moment a key fundraiser asked Trump about his plan to win back the narrative, and he told the person, "I am who I am," basically saying, right, that he is going to figure out on his own how to message, and that goes when he's challenged to his worst instincts, which is sort of what you talk about.
Well, in my book, I take us from the moment Donald Trump flies down on Air Force One for the very last time to Mar-a-Lago, and this era where he is trying to think about what his political future would be. He's building the team around him. He's thinking about 2024. He's making endorsements, but it's a moment where he is at his lowest. And Donald Trump at this moment it's not his lowest point by any means, but he is not the clear winner in these instances. And I think that's when you see Donald Trump lash out. That's when you see him try to take control of things in his own way. And I think that's why you're seeing things like him go after the Georgia governor, Kemp, on stage.
They go after Brian Kemp's wife, go after Kamala Harris's race, all these things, trying to take back the narrative. Meredith, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you. Kamala Harris now says she will secure the border. Why the attacks that worked on John Kerry might not work on the border czar.
President, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
This is the new Kamala Harris ad about the border. It's the closest we've gotten to a policy proposal on a major issue for the American people, which is quite different, you might say, her ad, than the views on the border, going back to a 2019 debate when she said crossing illegally into America should not be a crime.
Raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation. Can we keep the hands up so we can see them?
To be fair, she was one of many. With us now, Michael Warren, the Dispatch senior editor, and Karen D. Filippi, Democratic strategist, former deputy executive director for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Great to have both of you. Thank you. All right, Karen, to you. Can Kamala Harris, before the convention, or even during the convention, remake herself into, a Clintonian Democrat?
I think Kamala Harris can and is making herself into Kamala Harris. And if we're talking specifically about immigration, her position and her stances haven't changed from when she was Attorney General. She has been smart and tough. When she was Attorney General of California, the largest state in the country, she cracked down on guns and drugs coming across the border.
We're all entitled to our own opinions here. We're not entitled to our own facts. The person who says crossing illegally should not be a crime is not what Americans look at as securing the border. Those are two radically different policy proposals.
when Kamala Harris was vice president, she did secure the border, and we can see how migrant crossing has dropped significantly since she was vice president. Let's also keep in mind that she's running against Donald Trump, who, if he was serious about immigration and securing the border, he wouldn't have killed the bipartisan deal to win an election.
Okay. Mr. Warren, where are Republicans when you have on a number of issues, fracking, Green New Deal, single-payer health care, border policy, gun reform, police funding, that Kamala Harris would like people to believe, it seems, has radically changed her positions?
Look, I mean, Republicans are following the leader of their party. The leader of their party, Donald Trump, is focusing on things like whether or not Kamala Harris's campaign rallies have AI crowds added to them. I think this is a real failure for Donald Trump's campaign to sort of realize that they're not running against Joe Biden anymore. They're running against a new candidate. Remember 2012, the Etch-a-Sketch moment with Mitt Romney's campaign? That's what Kamala Harris has been given. So she's able to shunt aside pretty much everything that certainly the Biden administration stood for that gets in her way of winning in a general election. She's not facing reporters who might be asking her questions about those past positions.
She's not facing reporters at all.
At all. Right.
So, Garen, I think about this. Somehow Kamala Harris has created a situation where Americans disassociate Kamala Harris with the results of the Biden-Harris administration. It's kind of remarkable that that's happened. Understandably, it's happened in about 3 weeks. Is there a plan for her campaign once the honeymoon wears off?
Well, I'm not entirely sure the honeymoon is going to wear off, because I think categorizing it as a honeymoon is a discredit to what she's offering the American people, which is smart solutions. And that if you care about...
She's not offering any solutions. She's not offering any policies.
Well, I think she's offering her record as it has been. I also think that, President Biden, delivered record success for the American people, right? And she was a part of those success. And that's still in contrast to a president and his platform, which is Project 2025, which is a fundamental threat to our democracy, to our rights, and to American workers.
So something she's disavowed, just to be fair. Right. All right. Michael, last point to you. At what point are Republicans who are running down ballot going to start worrying about Donald Trump? And is there been any discussions of, if not now, when does the reset come?
I think everybody is waiting to see how the convention goes. Things will kick into high gear after Labor Day, but I think there's some real concern. There was a moment before Joe Biden dropped out where Georgia was off the table for Democrats. Republicans were going to win that state. Now Georgia's back on the table. Arizona, Nevada possibly back on the table. I think the panic is going to start to set in. It's going to take a couple more weeks.
All right. Good to see you. Thank you very much. Pleasure. Thank you very much. Tomorrow on the program, what exactly is happening at the White House? Here's Chris.